Jess isn't ready yet. All right, we will call this Development Committee meeting to order. Jess, would you call roll, please?
Lee,
Here.
Walther,
Here.
Height. Here.
Stand for the pledge. Mr. Mayor, will you get us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thanks, Nate and Mayor, for popping in on this.
Yep.
We do have Mr. Zetz, our law director, coming shortly. A couple housekeeping items, just to take care of right out of the gates. For those in the audience who have never been to a committee meeting, there's no public comment for committee meetings. That's just our rules. But after the meeting, I'll be glad to stay and answer any questions that anybody may have. But for committee meetings, whether it's development, utility, we've got, how many committees?
7 or 8.
We don't do public comment, so it's unlike our council meetings where we do have it. But like I said, I'm glad to stay and talk afterwards if anybody needs anything. That's the first thing. The purpose tonight, this afternoon, is we're only here to talk about the issue at hand, which is, the issue of ownership with China. Is there anything we missed? Is there anything that we could potentially do moving forward? And I think it's just a holistic look at, how do we, our vetting process, our CRA process. And I think we've got Nate here as our development committee representative, our consultant. We'll have our law director, and we can, I think there's a lot of residents that have questions, and it's our duty to answer those. And I think that we also have questions as council. So the purpose of this is to try and get these answers that not only the residents, but maybe some of us have as well, and so we can move forward. So that's where we're at. We've got an agenda here. Did you guys all get an agenda? Okay. You didn't? I think they're sitting over there. Before I hand it over to Scott to start talking about our first item, I want to give the committee members just a chance to say anything if they want to. You have anything, Andy?
Yeah, I've got many questions. They go across the board from zoning to legal to administrative, both in past actions as well as future preventative issues, state-wise, where we stand with representatives and so forth. I know that there's been many discussions that have happened over the last couple weeks. I do appreciate probably pulling this committee together quickly.
Yep.
To get this stuff put together and get some answers for Monday's council meeting. I don't know that we'll have all the answers, but we'll certainly have some understanding, some better understanding of maybe what has happened and what is possibly in the legal world necessary to happen forward, either local or state wise, from this council's perspective. I would say that, we are a local council. If anybody had come to council during the time that the masks and the, other federal requirements had been mandated, we would have had the same probably look on our face, saying that we really can't do much about that. It's a federal issue. If that's what we find through this question and answering session with our consultants, that's going to be the answer that we're going to be able to give you. If there's something that we can do through our incentive process, through our vetting of people that request incentives, we are all in to look at that and see what can be done. And that's why we brought Nate here, who's our consultant, our economic development consultant. So appreciate you letting me say all that, Tom.
Yeah, and before I hand it over to Mary, I just want to, I think you brought up a good point, is I think that even if once we go through all this, and the answer is, like you said, at the local level, our hands are tied, or we can or can't do this. I think that, at least in my opinion, we owe it to ourselves and to the residents of the city for them to feel, and us to feel, like there's been no stone unturned. And it's just not, we can't do anything. But if the answer is, we can't do anything, we at least have to make sure that to get to that answer, we have absolutely gone through this as deep as we can. And like I said, no stone unturned to get there. That might be the answer at the end, but we got to make sure that we did our homework. So, Mary?
I don't have anything at this time.
Okay. So the first thing we'll dive into is we're just gonna let Scott take this one and look at the flow chart, kind of the path taken on incentives in the corporate park. And I know we've all said, we did not give a tax abatement to any Chinese company, but I still want to look at that. I think we all want to look at that because, if there was there something that we missed there, even though we still stand by that? Did we miss anything? So I think it's a good place to start.
Okay, so this is something I think council has seen this before, but we'll do a quick run through. When the CRA, when folks started coming in to apply for CRAs, we put together a guide just to make sure that the administration and council are kind of on the same page of what we expected companies to do when they came through the process. And this way we could hand this out to them and say, here's your path forward, here's what council will be expecting. This is not codified, so it's not in the code, it's not a legal requirement, but we put it together just so everybody, like I said, was on the same page. So quickly running through, they'd come in, meet with the administration, come in with a concept plan, saying here's a piece of property, here's what we're proposing to do. These are our job numbers, we expect this salary, these many jobs over this period of time. So we would review that, and then ultimately, the administration would provide a recommendation to the development committee to say, we agree with this, we don't, here's some of the terms that we think, and then we would schedule a meeting with the development committee and the company would be there. After that, the development committee would speak with the company, establish what they feel are the proper terms and conditions of a CRA, and then make a recommendation that would move on to city council as a whole. And this is kind of where we get to a fork in the road. So we have the permitting track, which goes through mostly planning and zoning department, and we have the legislative track, which is mainly city council. So on the permitting track, they come in with the concept plan, we take a look at that, they meet with us, and then they would formally make an application, and that could be to Planning and Zoning Commission, that could be the BZA, or both. And this has not been updated since we updated the plan manufacturing regulations, so that should also include a stop at the council. As we recall, plan manufacturing that goes to Planning Commission, they make a recommendation to council. So that should also be on the permitting track. So then they have the appropriate hearing or hearings at this stage. Meanwhile, if the proposed terms of the CRA warrant school board involvement, it's the company's responsibility to negotiate with the school board on those terms and conditions. Once that is completed, an ordinance would be drafted and they would go to a first reading before council. And we see here this, if Planning Commission, Council, BZA hasn't determined what's going on with the plan or made their appropriate approvals, council will table at the second reading and not take it any farther. And the thought being, we're gonna approve the CRA, but we don't know what the plans, the final form is going to be. So until such time that we know what the final form of that plan is going to be, we're gonna table it. So assuming this goes through BZA, Planning Commission, Council, everything's okay, we move through the second and third readings of council. Meanwhile, on the permitting track, if there was conditions placed upon any approvals, they'll update the plans and then submit a construction plan application where we look at stormwater, kind of the nuts and bolts. That's handled administratively mainly through the Public Service Department, engineering, things of that nature. So once those are completed and they have their third and final reading and everything is approved, they can submit for zoning permit applications and then ultimately start construction of the project. I'd be
Okay.
happy to answer any questions on that.
Andy, you wanna start with your questions regarding zoning?
So in that process, there's no time in there that we require them to tell us who the end user is, correct?
That is correct. For example, if you use Red Rock as an example, they say we're building a spec building for warehouse distribution, and then we'll market it.
And so with that though, Red Rock definitely gives us their criteria. They're gonna tell us how many what their minimum employees are gonna be, you know, what their pay rates and what they would assume their wages are gonna be if they are actually looking for incentives at that point. And all this is based on incentives. If there's no incentives involved, then this is not what they go through, right? They go through a standard application, permit, scheduling for a permit if it's already zoned. I should have started there. If it's already zoned and it's already ready for planned manufacturing, and they are not looking for incentives from us, then literally it comes in with a plan to you guys. You guys look at it, make sure they meet all the code provisions, and then a permit is issued. Is that as simple as it gets?
More or less, typically, if, let's say it's zoned, everything's ready to go, they would start kind of here on the permit track and run through this. Any legislative track or anything up here is not in the picture. We'll
Okay.
just run through the normal approval process for anything through planning and zoning.
So incentive-wise, that kicks them into this additional work that they have to do to get approvals from the city.
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm assuming that you've gone back through your notes with Red Rock. They went through all this in a proper manner. They received all the proper approvals at that time, you know, during their application process.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Within this process, after, you know, they go into construction and they build their building, is there any clauses or anything within those provisions that say, look, if you don't do X, Y, or Z, you don't build 1 million square feet, instead you build 800,000 square feet, or you decide to do something different? Is there any, do they have to come back through council?
So for example, if they said, we're going to build 1 million square feet, and they said, never mind, we're gonna do 100,000 square feet, yes, because they're changing the plan, they would have to go through, assuming this is zone plan manufacturing, they would have to go through the process again to change their plan.
Okay, and we didn't have any of those issues.
That's correct.
Okay. And then who, man, I'll wait, because there's more as you get down through this. Okay, so I guess the next question is, after they do construction and we approve everything, when do the incentives actually kick in?
The incentives kick in when the building is essentially occupied.
Okay. So if it stays vacant, if it sits there with nothing happening, there are no incentives?
That's correct.
Okay, great. I'll let you go on with your presentation.
I think it's question answered. Did you have more to this?
No, that was just a quick overview.
Yeah, and this might be, well, first, Mary, do you have anything?
I guess, so they never have to tell you who the end user's gonna be, but they have an idea, is that right?
So if we use the Red Rock example, they said we're building a spec building for warehouse distribution. So we figured it would be a company aligned with that because that's the building they're creating. Sometimes it would be project-oriented, and they would give us a general idea of what they're looking to do. Sometimes they may already know. So they may say, this is gonna be a data center for Facebook. So then we would know exactly who it is. So it varies depending upon the application coming in.
And council would be aware of that so if they told you who that was, then we would be aware of that.
That's correct.
Okay.
But just for clarification, Scott, in this situation, Mary, they did not have a
Right.
user, they were spec. So when they use a use of warehouse type of operation, do we, under our code provisions, when they use a warehouse and they actually are a manufacturer, is there a differential between those two? Would they have to come in and get approval to be a manufacturer versus a warehouse?
It depends. So under the umbrella of plain manufacturing, there's a multitude of uses. So for example, if it's permitted warehouse distribution and they're allowed to they say we're selling it to this company and they make widgets. We would look to say, is widget manufacturing a permitted use in plain manufacturing? If it's yes, then we just proceed with the normal zoning process. If it's a conditional use, that requires a stop at the Board of Zoning Appeals, and if it's non-permitted, they can't do it in that zone.
Okay. And what we have currently in our zoning text, this type of manufacturing is approved as an approved, non-conditional use, use.
It is a permitted use.
Permitted use. That's why I put that.
You took the long way around.
I
the
did.
horn there on that one.
I was still blinded a little bit. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
I've got a question. So, and this might be, for both Brian and for Scott, but I think we've established through all the research that's been done in the discussions that the city cannot tell a landowner who they can sell to or lease to. Is that fair to say? We cannot, like, if, it doesn't matter who it is, we have no say in who a property owner either transfers their property to in a sale or chooses to lease to. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, assuming that, you know, what they're doing is properly zoned and it is a legal, you know, business, legal
Okay.
business.
So, in that case, because I think where we're at, where I'm wanting to try and really hammer in on is, if we have Red Rock who got the tax abatement, right? And we know that Red Rock, they purchased the ground, they got the tax abatement, they built the building. That tax abatement transfers to whoever they sell the building to, without any eyes on it. It just transfers, as long as it's a permitted use, correct?
I think it would be the terms in the CRA agreement that allows that.
Right.
That's the correct,
That allows
that's
that
the
to
correct
happen.
answer. The CRA agreement is what says you can transfer it. There might be a form to fill out or whatever, but
So, really nailing in on that, the transfer part. Is there any way legally for the city to know, or, I mean, they have to tell us who it is, but do we can we, I'm trying to look for the right word, can we have a say in that? Can we vet that? If it's a company, I guess what I'm hearing is as long as they meet the use, it's a permitted use, it doesn't matter who they transfer to.
I think it's, and I don't want to speak for Brian, but I think it's a permitted use with the same criteria that they used to come in for the incentive to begin with. So if they used 500 employees and they come in and they say, well, we only have 100, that's different. That changes
That's
it.
different, I know, when we
That
have a
changes
way,
it,
we have the
right.
board, right? Like,
Right.
if they say, we've got 700
we're
employees and they
we're
sell
jumping
us.
ahead on the agenda, but yeah, if they promise us so many jobs, Nate, you can feel free to jump in here, or Scott for that matter.
Well, I don't wanna jump ahead, we can come back to that.
No, that's, I mean, we can talk through it.
But the Tax Incentive Review Council is the avenue to address,
And that's at the county, right?
yes, the county
Okay.
commissioners ultimately.
Not jumping ahead, so.
No, it is, it's the county
But
term,
I don't wanna
but-
lose,
yeah.
I know I didn't do a great job, cause I was searching for the exact word and I couldn't find it, but I guess I don't wanna lose that thought is that transfer process. When a company is transferring that tax abatement, I want, maybe we can come back to that after Nate talks, but what stipulations, do we have any? Do we have anything besides the job amount numbers that we do have a board to review? There's no review process for that. There's nothing that says, it's just basically, if you meet the intended use, it could be anybody. The way it's.
That's, well.
And maybe
so
that's
I
the
think
law.
that-
Maybe we don't have a say in that.
So I think that it's possible that we could have a say in it. I think it is, certainly in this instance as it exists, that is not there. I don't think the agreement with Red Rock,
No, I mean, that's right, the way the Red Rock agreement reads is that they have the ability to assign it to another user. And we as city council or administration doesn't have the right to say no to that. Now, I think to Tim's point, we could certainly change that if we wanted to, right? We could, going forward, we could have some ability in there to at least review who that is. You know, that, I think, The developers wouldn't like that, but that doesn't really matter, right? It would be something, if that's what council wants to do, that we could put that provision in there.
Does anybody else that you consult with or have dealt with in the past have that provision?
Yeah, it's, yes, it does, Tommy, absolutely. I mean, there's other cities that have it that way, sure. The city of Columbus, if you want to transfer, if you want to assign something in the city of Columbus, from a current owner to another owner, you have to go back to city council to get that approved. They require that. Other places, the city of Canal Winchester, it operates just as we do here. As we did in the CRA agreement for Red Rock, it transfers automatically through the agreement. Our neighbors to the south, every one of those, literally directly to the south, every one of those CRA agreements there is the exact same that we have here, that it transfers and assigns to the new owner without any approval from the township or the county.
Yeah, because I mean, let's say we put that in place.
Mhm.
It's not just that simple, right? Because
No.
if we're now gonna say yay and nay, we have to have some type of criteria.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't
Absolutely.
just say, we're gonna review everything. Well, if it's transferred, we're reviewing it. What are we reviewing?
Right, and I think, and you're right, we'd have to, you know, in this chart, right, we'd have flow chart, we'd have to put something in there, right, so that if that happens, here's the criteria we're gonna review.
What criteria does Columbus use, do you know offhand?
Andy, honestly, it's anybody.
I
It
didn't
doesn't
know
matter.
Columbus did that.
Yeah, no,
Quite
the only reason I know it is I just had to do it. I had a developer client, that had built a building on Stelzer Road. It's a 200,000 square foot building. They didn't even transfer it, they just transferred from one LLC to another. And in that case, they take it back through council. Now, that's the city of Columbus. They do a lot of things different because they're a big government, right? But yeah, they do. That's the way. But there's really no, I would say, Andy, in that case, there's no criteria. If the entity changes, you have to go back through. I think in our case, we could say, I mean, there's a lot of ways we could do it, and Brian and I would have to, and Scott would have to work on that, and Tim on what it would look like. If it's an entity that is the same makeup of the original owners, and maybe we don't have to transfer it. But if it's somebody that's completely different, then maybe the criteria is, okay, are they gonna have the same jobs? Are they gonna have the same payroll or more? This user that's going in, they're blowing out the numbers of what Red Rock was going to agree to. And does it meet zoning? Does it, is it a use that meets those kind of things? Those are the kind of things we could at least put in as criteria.
But I don't think it would adjust to what you're thinking about
Yeah.
of,
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I get that.
Yeah.
But I don't know that if we said a specific country, that would be legal.
Well, I
Would it
don't
be,
think that,
Brian?
I don't
I
think
think-
that'd be legal. I'm not
I
an
think
attorney, but
we could
Brian
say
shakes his
uses.
head.
I mean, I think uses would be one of them. I mean, and to Scott's point, the conditional versus permitted uses, obviously, they are still coming back to us if it's a conditional use versus permitted use. So there's some already in that checks and balances already there for uses. That's why I kind of went down that path of asking the question, does the manufacturing meet the warehouse use requirement for transfer? Yeah, I think it'd be very difficult to say one company owned by a country. Now, there are some, anyhow, I don't want to jump too far ahead of the agenda anyhow, because there are some issues that are through the state, through the ORC, that does have some provisions that I definitely want to explore. But in this
Yeah,
case, I
and
would say it
who's
would be
to say-
difficult.
Who's to say hypothetically, say it was legal and you could say this, a provision is this country. You could say anything. I mean, all they gotta do is form a shell company, you never know, right? Am I right in that? Like,
I mean, they have to, and we can talk about it more, they have to, in order to do business in Ohio, I'm sorry, not in order to do business in Ohio, in order to get incentives from Jobs Ohio, they have to have an entity that's registered in the state of Ohio. Now, that can look any way that it wants, Tommy, to your point. They have an entity, their LLC is set up, I believe it's Envenergy, right? It's that LLC. That's what they have set up, and it's an Ohio company, and that's how they have operated in the state of Ohio. But yeah, they could come in and set up an LLC and be registered in the state and come in and be part of, be part of the city.
Okay. Anything else while we're on that topic, or can we move on to the next one?
I guess the last piece of that puzzle is, when we go through and we review their applications for incentives, that's obviously, Nate, something you're working with the administration on. Besides looking at the Secretary of State's, website, is there anything more that you do to investigate ownership? Or, in Red Rock's case, let's just use Red Rock. So if we thought maybe Red Rock had, I'll just use something crazy, some Russian backing to it or whatever, do you do anything more than just look at the Secretary of State's website to see who's their statutory agent, where are they registered, what EIN number are they using, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, and we, so the answer is yes to that, right? We look into, I always, when that comes in, or when we get a question, I always try to dig into it to see exactly who they are and what's going on there. Because, you all know it, we've seen it, in the last 6 years, there's a lot of LLCs that come up that are building buildings that we've never heard of, right? So I always dig into it, and that helps inform us of who they are. Red Rock's a known entity, so that wasn't as difficult, but there are other entities that come in that we've never heard of, but we dig into it and make sure that we understand what they're coming from, who they're funded. There's private equity firms sometimes that fund these entities, these developers. We try to dig into that a little bit to understand where they are, who they're funded, and how they're
And a little bit about what they do.
Yeah, yes. And we also, I would say that we, part of the process, and Scott mentioned it, we meet with them. And in that process of meeting with them, we find out a lot of that information too.
I hope we do. Obviously, I hope we do more than a bank does to give them a loan, kind of thing. Looking for financials and so forth. I'm hopeful that we do that across the board. So that's good. It sounds like we do take that
We do.
Opportunity, and
And
I would agree with you,
and we
Red
could
Rock.
Probably, we could, if we wanted, we could formalize that a little bit more in the
We could, although I want to point out, we're not forensic business people.
No, and I would also be careful with anything that they're providing. Those, they're going to be careful with any kind
Sure.
of public documents. So it's a slippery
Yeah.
slope. So okay,
I
thanks.
just wanted to know our options, I think. That's
Yeah,
what we're trying to figure out.
Absolutely, Tom. I agree.
So,
The next item is zoning, but I don't know if we've already covered that.
yeah, I feel like we have, unless anybody had any further questions on that.
I think it's pretty simple. You've already answered it, Scott. We asked this question during open meeting, open session. Did they meet zoning? Yes, they do. Okay, that's all we needed on that one.
Okay.
Which,
We might come back to you, but for now, we're good.
actually, I think he's
Yeah, I think
next.
the next one.
Oh,
He's
I'm
next. He's
I'm next,
up.
Tommy. I'm ready.
I was one ahead, sorry.
Well, I tell you what we will do, and this goes into the state's information. So I prepared a couple things to show you all, just from the perspective of this, when they come in and request incentives from the state. Hopefully there's one there for you.
Got it.
I should have passed these out ahead of time. That would have made a lot.
We had 5 minutes.
Keep talking.
Then we had 15 minutes.
Dang, a few extra minutes.
You're right, Andy.
Hey, I know Scott's got, is there any more zoning questions or can we get, is there anything else, because I know you got childcare,
I appreciate that.
yeah. Does anybody have anything else for Scott? If not, I'm gonna let him roll so he can get to his daughter.
I guess, Scott, if you don't mind answering, I know when you compare and contrast, Nate already kind of hit on it a little bit. Compare what Red Rock had supplied for their incentive package, which was, I don't know, 600 jobs. I can't remember exactly what it was,
It
but
was like
whatever that was.
546 or something, Andy.
What was it?
It was like 546.
It was a 600 job, if
Yeah.
I remember correctly, something that way, and the details about that, warehouse type of stuff. Compared to what the transfer document came in for Illuminate. What were their employees? What did they, and I'm jumping ahead in my notes, but I just wanted to find out the differential between the two.
There were 850,
850.
850 for Illuminate, which has since moved to over 1,000.
Okay. And is there, with that differential, it's been brought up, it's been stated by questions coming from the community. With that amount, I mean, normally communities say, that's wonderful, that's great. But in this situation, do we need to explore that is in any detriment, such as traffic, such as any type of roadway issues that we've got to explore, because instead of having 586, we now have over 1,000. Is there anything that we need to do to accommodate that additional, obviously, something slightly different than what, well, by 80% difference, that differential in employees?
And that has been discussed. We're looking to put disclaimers on traffic studies, so if we're doing a traffic study for this particular use, and it has this many employees and all the parameters with that, if they come back and say, well, now it's going to be this many employees, so that increases it. So it throws the traffic study off. So you have to revisit it and do the traffic study based on what's actually going there.
So, and I know we've worked with Red Rock. We've actually taken their deposits already, and we've already utilized them for the improvements that are already happening on Refugee and so forth. So with that, are we looking at additional traffic information for this many more employees? For instance, for anything along Mink Road, for traffic concerns, turn lanes, signals, anything like that?
Yes, that's been looked at, that, you know, for example, the turn lane only has to be this length. Well, now for 800, you need to do study
Stacking.
that could determine it needs to be much longer. So that criteria, because if it's based off the previous one, is no longer valid, so they need to provide a new traffic study based upon the criteria that will happen.
Okay, and we've asked them for that.
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, I think they've agreed. I know we're working on the road development agreement kind of as a result of that for where the new road connects to Mink.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the worries. I think that's one of the concerns that was voiced during the last couple of council meetings. I think it's worthwhile exploring, making sure that we know that answer, that is happening, and there could be some additional, more construction.
Yeah, I
that could
don't
happen
know,
on
I
Mink.
don't know that it's gonna affect the changes to Etna Parkway.
No, shouldn't.
And I don't think Etna Parkway and Broad probably needs looked at anyway in the future, what that's gonna look like. And I don't know if Alan has looked at Mink and Broad. It's close, I don't know, but it's not real close. And I don't think it warrants a traffic signal in the middle of Mink.
Okay. Last item on this one, because we haven't heard this question, we haven't heard it in open session, but as far as water usage and power usage, are either one of these gonna be detrimental to any other businesses that are locating in our area? By having this manufacturer come in, are they a heavy water user, for instance?
I don't believe they
That we
are.
know of.
I don't think their uses are much greater than what was projected.
So they're flushing toilets and that's about it?
Yeah, I mean,
Washing-
they're doing some manufacturing there, but it's not, it's mostly assembly more than
Okay.
anything.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. And electricity, AEP, they had already committed to providing it there, so,
I think it's a big circuit, but I think it's doable. It's not,
yeah.
they're not pulling some mega data center. But I'm certainly no expert in AEP power, so.
No, it's part of that change, whether it's incentives or it's a disadvantage to other businesses locating in the area. I think it's worthwhile at least understanding that if we're gonna give incentives.
Yeah, sure.
I agree.
Yep.
I mean, that only goes with any incentive that we give or any change to any piece of land in the corporate park.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Is Scott good? Does anybody have anything?
I think I'm done with.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep,
Go take
thanks,
care of
Scott.
your daughter.
All right, so the next item, and what I wanted to at least provide, or what I put together for you, and we can, we don't have to go through all that's in here. There's 4 pages of information. I think it's a lot. Tim and I kind of talked about this. This is, this project, Illuminate, received support incentives from Jobs Ohio. They received basically a workforce grant from Jobs Ohio for the project. So I thought it would, as Tim and I talked about it kind of made sense for everybody to understand what Jobs Ohio is and how they're involved in the process, how they kind of vet projects when they come in. So most of you know, I would assume Jobs Ohio is a private nonprofit corporation. It is not a public entity. It receives no public tax dollars. It gets all of its funding, and if you go to the third page of the document, it gets all of its funding through the sale of liquor in the state of Ohio. Before 2013, the state of Ohio owned liquor. They owned literally the bottles that you would buy in the liquor store. They owned them, and any of the profits from the sale of that liquor went to the state of Ohio into their enterprise account that was housed at the Ohio Department of Commerce. In 2013, Jobs Ohio bought the franchise rights to that liquor sale. So while the state still controls the sale of liquor in the state of Ohio by the statutes they have in place and the laws, Jobs, it's not even Jobs Ohio, it's the Jobs Ohio beverage system actually owns the liquor. And they own it as a private entity. They don't get any, there are taxes that come from the sale of liquor, but Jobs Ohio doesn't get any of that. That all goes to the state of Ohio. The only thing that the Jobs Ohio beverage system gets is literally the profit that is made on the sale of liquor in the state of Ohio. So what the Jobs Ohio beverage system does, and in turn Jobs Ohio, they take that profit. They sold $1.4 billion worth of debt when they bought the business. If you look on page 4, when they bought the liquor business from the state, they sold bonds for $1.4 billion. That was an initial payment to the state to pay off some debt that Liquor Profits had been funding. It also funded the initial operations of Jobs Ohio. They have not issued any. They have not issued any more debt, but the profits that the Jobs Ohio Beverage Systems gets, goes to pay off that debt, and then it also goes to pay for employees for Jobs Ohio. It also goes to pay for all of the programs that Jobs Ohio has in place. And I don't know if you all know this, but I was at Jobs Ohio in 2011 when it started, so I helped do all this stuff. So it's near and dear to my heart. I also was at the state in 2000 when we used to talk about the beverage, the liquor sales, and how it helped economic development back then. It's helped economic development for 30 years in Ohio, 40 years in Ohio. So anyway, again, to reiterate, the Jobs Ohio is not funded by any public money. It's not funded by any liquor sales. It's not funded by any of their taxes. It's not funded by any taxes. It's only funded by liquor sales. So the last page number 5, I thought it was beneficial to go through the process when companies come in. There's 2 things that you have. You have that page on page 5, the process they go through, and I'll go through that. I also provided for you a application, the Jobs Ohio application. This is actually an application for an actual company. Because you can't get the application unless you apply, but what I did is redacted all the information for the company. But I wanted to at least go through so you could at least see what they asked for. In order to get any funding from Jobs Ohio, whether it's workforce funding, an economic development grant, an infrastructure grant, a loan, any of those kind of things, or Illuminate didn't get this, but if they get a tax credit from the state of Ohio, they have to provide all of these things to the state of Ohio. So they have to provide proof that they're registered to do business in the state of Ohio. They have to provide 3 years of audited financial statements. They have to provide 3 years of projections, so going forward projections. They have to, and we've talked about this just like in our agreements, they have to provide a commitment of new jobs, new payroll, retain jobs and payroll if there are jobs that are already there, and then they have to make a commitment of capital investment. And again, this is for any project that comes in. This is Illuminate had to provide all this to the state of Ohio. They also have to provide a statement regarding financial liability, legal liability, and any tax or environmental liabilities. And if you go to that application I provided, on the 3rd page of that document, there's a part that starts with legal section. And if you look through, there are 10 questions there, and then there's 10 questions on criminal and regulatory. So essentially, they have to state, do you owe any taxes to the state of Ohio or any entities in the state of Ohio, any political entities, subdivisions, any cities, counties, any of those kind of things. Has your company filed for bankruptcy? Do you have any unpaid judgments against you? Do you have, if you go down to criminal, do you have any, are you, the company, or any of your shareholders have been convicted of a felony? Do you, the officers or director defended in any criminal action? Is the company under any kind of subject for any injunction by the state or any other entity? They also ask about environmental liabilities. If you go to regulatory, if there's been any environmental fines or environmental issues brought against the company. And then the last section, if you look on the last page, is about civil action and civil liabilities. What's interesting about this, they do this and they ask these questions. They also run background checks on all these companies. So they want to make sure that, okay, you say this is true in here. Then they actually go and they make sure that the companies are paying their taxes and there's no environmental liabilities, and they check to make sure about whether they have any pending actions against them.
Nate?
Yes?
What happens if a company doesn't have 3 years of history?
Well, most times they don't. Well, let me just say, Tim, the companies to get not in all cases, but in most cases, the companies have to be in business for at least 1 year to get any kind of incentive from Jobs Ohio. So that if they don't have 3 years and they have 1 year, and they can explain why they've only been in business for 1 year, they may be able to get incentives. It doesn't have to have 3 years of audited financial statements.
Thank you.
Yep. Because every company's different. They have flexibility in what they do, but every company's different. So Jobs Ohio and the State of Ohio Department of Development, when any of these projects comes in, they vet them all through those items that I just talked about. So, while that we're not directly related to that process, at least we know that this company had to go through that process to get anything from Jobs Ohio. And certainly, they wouldn't have been able to get anything if they wouldn't have been able to provide all those things to the state.
So just for clarification, Nate, the $350 million that is reported that they're getting per year, is that through Jobs Ohio or is that through a federal
That's through
incentive?
federal. Andy,
Yeah.
that's federal.
Okay.
Yeah, they're getting, they got a workforce, they got 2 workforce things from the state of Ohio. They got a workforce grant, and then they got Jobs Ohio does a whole workforce program to help them hire people. They got those 2 incentives. I don't know the values of those, but
You
the
just said
$350 million in,
You just said through the state of Ohio was through Jobs Ohio.
I meant through the Jobs Ohio.
Yeah, Right.
They didn't get any state of Ohio incentives that I'm aware
I just
of.
want to be sure.
So just to follow up on that,
Yeah.
Jobs Ohio, does it have who regulates Jobs Ohio?
Technically, nobody regulates Jobs Ohio. They have to, like any nonprofit, they have to file a 990 with the federal government. They do have to, they are subject to state audits, because that's what the state, when they were founded in 2011, the state put in provisions in the Ohio Revised Code that they're subject to at least state audits, but they're not regulated by anybody per se.
So Jobs Ohio gave a two minor grants to them
Yeah.
for workforce, and so, okay, so that's fine. And that looks like they go through a process to do that.
They do.
Doesn't sound like there's anybody no state oversight that's gonna say, hey, that guy answered that question wrong and you didn't find it.
Although
type of thing.
I will tell you though, Andy, they're very concerned about any of that, about there being
Improvising.
somebody coming back and saying, you didn't do that, you didn't go through any of the process. And so, while there's no true oversight of it, they are, from the beginning and in 2011 when it started, there was a lot of scrutiny that was paid to Jobs Ohio. So they are very, very careful with how they do this. This may sound kind of ridiculous, but they're actually more careful than even at the Ohio Department of Development.
Good.
Okay, cool. Any other questions?
Well, I got several, but not about that.
Okay, I'll stand up here. I'm happy to.
Go for it.
Well, federal government, So, in this situation, what information might we have gotten regarding the federal grants and the federal subsidies that they received?
That's a great question, Andy. I do not, we didn't get any. I didn't get any of
Okay.
those.
Do we normally see that? Do we normally see
I-
anything?
I would say we don't, Andy. We don't have, we don't get that information. I mean, even most other economic development entities, they don't see any you don't see federal grants or information.
Are you familiar with any type of scrutiny that the federal government puts them through? I mean, obviously,
Well,
our administration that was put in place 3 years ago by the questionable majority of our country, by the voting majority of our
sure.
country, they came up with a green energy policy.
Yep.
They put together billions and billions of dollars to
Correct.
fund these types of companies and these types of operations. What, do you know of any scrutiny that they give to these types of large grants?
Now, I will tell you, I don't know the specifics of it, but there is an application process that they have to go through that's similar to the application process that they go through with Jobs Ohio.
Is there any chance we can get any kind of information on that?
Yeah, we can ask for it.
If we can ask
absolutely.
for it, I mean, I think it would be worthwhile us having it. It's come up as an issue, as a question.
Yeah,
And I'd certainly like to explore what they go through,
Yep.
especially if there's any opportunity for local input when they are going through those applications.
absolutely.
Yeah, question. Or are you done?
I'm done with that, yep.
Mary, anything down there from you yet?
I don't.
Okay. I'll wait till he's done writing. I just thought I'd give you a break, Andy.
Thanks.
Throw one here and there.
That's okay. This is normal for me.
Mayor, if you've got anything, pipe up too, just let me get. Okay, so I reached out to, state representatives Thad Claggett
Okay,
and Kevin Miller.
okay,
And I was assured by both of them, as we're learning, that there is legislation, at the state level that is in committee, draft form essentially, that is more targeted towards Chinese companies in the state, doing business in the state. Neither of them were, and I invited both of them to this meeting. They couldn't because they're in committee meetings,
Yep.
and it was last minute too, so.
Yeah.
But, I guess I'm gonna lean on you to ask you if, because they were not on the committees that were drafting that, but they knew people that, obviously they knew people that were, and they were going to ask questions as to, some of the questions I asked was, what's in it, obviously, the draft. What's the timeline on it?
yeah,
Because, whatever that is in draft form, I think that our residents that are concerned and us, our elected leaders up here, need to be able to, if they want, weigh in on that, voice their opinion, however they may see fit. So, with that being said, my question is, are you aware of any of that, or do you have any knowledge about what's in draft form?
Tommy, I'm not, I have no idea, but I'll ask Tim Bigham, who you guys are all, you're familiar with. Chris and Tim are, he's our Director of Government Relations.
We wouldn't see that, but I'm certain, I'd like to see it. I'm sure that our residents would like to see it.
Yeah,
And then, at least we know that we know where to direct our questions, and what, I'm sure we will have them.
Yeah.
But, I just wondered if you know of anything.
I'm not aware of that legislation. There are other states that have enacted legislation already along those lines. I will tell you, there are companies that are already in Ohio that are Chinese-owned, majority Chinese-owned firms. Fuyao, which is a massive operation over in Dayton, makes plate glass. They brought 1,500 jobs, I think, to the state several years ago. That was back in 2012 or 13. They've been a great company, and they've been here. The state attracted them at that time. That was a different time, but there are other companies like that do business in the state of Ohio that are Chinese firms. I mean, I'm aware of another one that's a manufacturing firm that's in Dayton has 350 employees that is wholly owned by a Chinese individual, but his daughter runs it, and she lives here, and she's she's American educated. So there are companies that are already here that are doing business that are Chinese companies.
But I think I want to back on Tommy's point.
Yeah.
If there is some type of discussion in committee, if they would accept local input, you know, I can say that I would suggest to them that they put some type of clause about terrorist countries, terrorist supporting countries. Why would we do any business with those countries?
Yeah.
That would be an example that I would use.
think the
We have a list. There is a federal list for that.
Yep.
And I think that would make sense for us to hopefully get that past the goal line for, I know Mr. Zetz is over there cringing, but at least we can say, look, if the federal government won't do business with this country or whatever because they're a terrorist supporter, we shouldn't be doing business with them either.
Right.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And so, Andy, what I will assure you of is that I'll find out what it is, who has introduced it, if it's in a committee or not, and then I'll get back to Tim and Chris and then distribute that to all of you so you know.
And the two representatives that I spoke with assured me that they would also circle back with us. So if you're getting the info, they're getting the info.
Yep.
When we get it, we can share it.
Absolutely.
So that was my question. Go ahead, Andy.
Okay. I guess for Mr. Zetz and for Nate, I looked up some ORC codes. There's a section 5301.254, and this has to do with foreign entities. If they own more than 10% and it's a value of the property is either over 100,000 or over 3 acres, they have to at least register with the Secretary of State. I don't know who follows up on that, or if that's a local follow-up, or if it, unfortunately, the ORC does not say who is in charge of making sure that that happens. Do we have any, and maybe this is for Tim, do we have any way of looking into that, not only for this company, or for any other company that may have foreign interest that's over 10%? I mean, there are some state codes that are in place that they follow this kind of stuff, and they do it for a reason. They do it because they don't want bad actors from foreign countries owning property and owning companies in the United States. So if we don't do it, at least if we know about it, can we send out a letter to the state, or can we do a little investigation on how we go about looking into that?
Yes.
So,
Maybe that, I don't know, Brian, maybe that's the Secretary of State's office or.
Yeah, I don't know.
probably is. I'm guessing they do have some really, really strange language on enforcement in that code, but from our point of view, as long as we are aware of it and we can at least ask the question, if somebody else is responsible for enforcing it, great. Let's see here, whatever. Yeah, and I'm going to assume that Mr. Zetz, you've already answered several of this genre of questions of, what can we do to check on whether or not they're bringing in materials from provinces that employ slave labor, that kind of stuff. I couldn't find anywhere where there's a code that says that either the state or federal government, and I perused quite a bit of it, to find out where they check on that.
Right.
Do you have anybody in your firm that is somewhat knowledgeable on the SEC and Trade Commission stuff? I mean, the only thing I can think of is it's in, the 20 million pages of the SEC code.
And the Federal Trade Commission.
Yeah, I do not, because we have no one actually who does. It's a very specialized area if you do FCC.
I didn't have enough
security
time in
work,
my
and-
life to look at all
Yeah,
that.
and yes, I don't know of any, and no.
Okay, there's gotta be something. And I wanna step back, I'm not saying this company's doing anything wrong. I don't believe what I read in the Wall Street Journal. I don't believe what I read or what I hear on the news. So as far as I'm concerned, the only thing we can do is rely upon the codes that are put in place, that have been put in place by either the federal government or the state government to try to avoid these types of situations. And quite frankly, I don't trust them to do the work either. So if we have to ask the question to somebody, I'd like to find out who we can ask that question to. Does that make any sense, Brian?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. those were kind of, and again, Brian, you'd answered these questions. I don't think we can, and I don't think it's in our place to say that we're going to monitor and regulate where something is imported from, as long as it's meets the state and federal code. I appreciate Tommy checking with the state representatives and Mr. Balderson as well.
I did talk to Troy and Congressman Balderson, and he, like us, you know, we know what side of the aisle he's on, and is frustrated as well. I don't want to put words in his mouth, so I'm not going to do that. But he was going to look into some of those same
Maybe he
questions.
can help us out with that question. Maybe
Yeah.
he'll have some specialist on his team.
He said that he was going to have his office, you know, what I did, it basically is, for all of them, for those, I think most of you were at least CC'd on it, but when I contacted them and I spoke to them in person, and then I also followed up with an email. My email was your questions and answers document, so that they could see the questions that we were being asked by the people. And I also shared with them our meeting, that, you know, the citizens' comments. I wanted them to see our council meeting, what the residents are asking from us, because, you know, we're learning too, and we're trying to do our jobs and provide them with answers, and a lot of them we just don't have. And, you know, I get how it looks, right? Like, we're sitting up here and well, you know, some of this is new to us, and we want to provide you with accurate answers that are factual, and sometimes, you know, silence isn't that we don't care, it's that we don't know. And hopefully, you know, they all assured me they watched that, and it was powerful. I think that they're, you know, I could get on and watch all of your comments from the other night. It wasn't me trying to paraphrase what the people were saying. They actually got to see it, and I think that's important. And they took note of that, and I just want to make sure, you know, when we have residents come in, whether it's a question about this or something else, that we can provide them with those answers. And I think we're doing our best, even if it doesn't look like it. We are. I promise. I know we are. But at what point? I mean, there's sometimes you have, and that's what we're here for tonight, is what can we do? Let's make sure that we're peeling every layer back, looking under every rock. Because if we're going to look at our residents and say, I'm sorry, this is a state issue or this is a federal issue, I want to be darn sure that I haven't missed anything. And I can look them in the eye and say, I'm not passing the buck. You know, I'm trying here, but I can't. I mean,
Yeah.
people don't want to hear that, but I think that's what we're all still trying to do. And as this evolves, there's more questions that come up. You know, as we're peeling layers back, well, I didn't think about that. You know, you've come up with a couple tonight that haven't been asked yet. But that's a product of us diving into this 110%, because that's what our residents are asking us to do. So, moving on. Nate, we may call you back. I don't know.
I can stand up or sit down. Whatever you want me to do.
If you want to sit down, we've asked a lot. The review of imports and sources, who's responsible for where from? Tim, do you want to?
Well, I think that just goes to what Mr. Walters just said.
Kind of went through.
Yeah,
I
I
jumped
know,
through
I know, but
6 and 7 real quick. And
I know, I
into
just
7
wanted-
and 8.
you
Yeah,
haven't
I
had
think-
much.
yeah.
You haven't had much of a chance to talk, and I just want to give you an opportunity.
No, the same thing that I think Andy found is what I've experienced and what I believe, which is I don't know that the city has an arm to go inspect or ask or confirm, would be a better word, that something is not being sourced from an area. I think we have to rely on the federal government. Maybe that, I don't know, I'll ask Nate who does that. But I don't know of any municipality that does do that. I don't know that they have the expertise to do it or the resources to do it. I know we don't. You could tell me, there's no doubt about this, don't worry about it, this came from here. I have no way to check to see if it came from Kansas City or Taiwan.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Tim. I mean, the challenge we face is to your point, Andy, we have to rely on the federal government for a lot of it, right? There's things that flow in every day, that come in through our ports and then go to Amazon facilities or FedEx facilities that are regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, regulated by, our trade pacts, our trade laws, those kind of things that we at the local level can't go and inspect and do. We don't have the ability to do that, or the authority to do that.
Well, do you mind if I change gears just a second? So, Tim, in your answers to some of the questions, you had put in, I think the last item was the company indicated they were interested in being part of the community.
Yeah.
And pieces and parts of that, it was very vague. And what I guess I'm asking is, how do they want to be part of the community? What are their specific ideas? Have they reached, I'm gonna kind of, shotgun these off real quick. Have they contacted the school district to see what the school district might want or may not want, as far as their involvement? Do they just want them to, if they have some kind of technology that is innovative and new, are they going to bring high school kids over and somehow benefit the learning of science and math and so forth? I'm not in any way saying that they're going to indoctrinate them. I'm saying, are they going to facilitate some learning, extracurricular learning activity, such as what Google and Facebook, Amazon, and Intel plans on doing up in Licking Heights, and have done. They've done unbelievable computer labs, and science programs up there that have taken Licking Heights to levels that they've never seen before. Is this company, and I'm not asking this company per se to do all of that, but what are they planning on doing? What have they said that they're going to do? Are they going to build a park? Are they what are they going to do to be part of the
I
community?
think they would say that at this point, in fact, I'm actually going to, honestly, and this is a quote, honestly, it's all just ideas at this point. I don't think that there's any promises. I think that they have talked about being a good partner with the city on helping to fund the fireworks, helping there's a company out of Cincinnati that builds essentially like Lego blocks, and working and then contacting the schools and seeing if they can set up how an assembly line works and showing kids that kind of STEM stuff. It's really in the very early idea stage. There have been no promises made, and there is no specific stuff that I think they could point to, or I could point to. There's a maker lab that's in a library, and they were talking about partnering on the maker lab, which I just assume means some type of assembly, a lab for kids to play with assembly stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's all in the idea phase right now. I don't think it's even close to, and whether, now they may have contacted the schools, I don't know.
Okay. I just thought from our point of view, from if we're making a statement to the community that they want to be part of the community and they want to do things, if we had examples or some kind of idea to what level they want to participate in the schools or in the community, it'd be helpful. If they would give us that.
Yeah, I can
That'd
ask
be
them.
great.
And we didn't make that statement, they did, right?
No, I understand.
Okay.
No,
I just wanna be clear about that.
but their statement was very generic and very loose. And I'm just asking if there was any more involved,
Yeah,
any
was
more
it-
thought involved in
and
that.
nothing firmer.
That's fine. I'm not, heck, they haven't even opened their doors yet. I'm not
Right.
saying that they need to have a complete plan. I'm just saying the more they give us information, the more we can understand their level of wanting to be part of the community.
Yeah.
I know that, I'm just kind of going through in my head, I'm looking at my list, I got a lot of stuff here to make sure that, we've hit everything. I know one of the questions that's been, this is for Mr. Zetz. One of the questions the community has been pretty adamant about at least asking is, do we have any way to illuminate, to do a Q&A for the public? They don't have to do that, right? Like, we can ask them to do that, but they're under no obligation to do that. If we can't say,
You have to be here.
you have to be here
Can't
to
order
answer
them.
questions. Like, all we could do is ask and they could say yes or no.
Correct.
Okay.
Just the same as we can ask them to be transparent on where their materials are coming from. You know, similar to what the car companies did 15 years ago, when they moved here and started making cars here.
Right.
And they put on a percentage that was, United States-made materials and foreign-made materials.
Right.
That was something that maybe the states required back then. I don't know. I can't imagine a community required that,
Right.
but the states did. So
Yep.
that would be another piece to that puzzle
Yeah.
that I'd love to get a local voice to the committees on. Okay.
Have we missed anything? I know we've gone through our agenda for the most part, but while we're here, and if anybody's thought of anything, have we missed anything? Is there anything more we can do? Anybody else we can call? We've called our state reps, we're waiting on answers from them. We've called, our congressman. I don't know, Mayor, is there anything you haven't had a chance to speak, is there anything you wanna add, or?
We've covered, I'm trying to Andy's point, I know Mary and Brandon and I we did the tour, and I think it was Eric that was with us, and again, they do want it. I had mentioned to them about the Intel taking the lead on getting some courses in some of the schools around here to help, when they get ready to hire, and he was all on board on reaching out to the schools to see if there was any programs that they could initiate, that's needed over here when they start working, to get kids in there and stuff, so, but again, they haven't opened their doors yet, they wanna be a part of the community, and no, everything that you've covered here tonight has helped tremendously, cause I'm still, answering questions on the internet, and no, all good. All good.
Nate, I guess to Nate, anything that you would propose that you've seen in these recent years at least with the geopolitical issues that are going on? Anything that you've seen as a trend that we would want to be aware of?
Yeah, the community meeting's interesting, if they'd be willing to do it, and welcome to Pataskala. I think that's something that would probably go a long way with you all and with residents, I would guess. That's something that maybe we ought to explore. And that's something that's not even a new thing. That's something that companies have been doing forever, as they go into a community, and especially as big as this operation. So that's something maybe we ought to explore. I think we were talking about the schools. I think, Tim, I'll take the lead on, if you're okay with it, scheduling a meeting with them and with Southwest Licking and with CTEC. Because I think we ought to bring that together and have an education discussion. I think we ought to include Jobs Ohio in that and figure out what they're doing, if they're already doing things. Those are two things in my mind that I think, might be worthwhile.
You may have already contacted them, so.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything else to add?
Yeah, Tony, I guess my statement I'd make to the committee is, look, I'm of the opinion that we should be as you said, turning over every leaf we can to prove any kind of guilt, to prove any kind of malfeasance or impropriety that may be out there. But we don't need to turn over every leaf to prove innocence. My point to these questions are to say, is there something that they've done wrong? Is there something we didn't do or that we did incorrectly? That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to have someone stand up and say, I'm a good guy. I think we need to prove if they're not. That's the way I look at it. Does that make,
No, it does, and I think my point is I think that, when I say no stone unturned, I think you're right. We wanna make sure that we've done our job that we were elected to do. and we didn't miss anything. I also think it's a good learning opportunity for us to look back at how we're doing it. And are we doing it right overall, regardless of what company and what country, like, you know, I think it's always good to just look in the mirror and go, okay, you know, we're doing this. We have a corporate park that was put in place way before any of us that are sitting here were here. What,
2009,
9?
8?
None of us were here. So that's when they said, this is where the corporate park's gonna go. And we are the ones that are, I guess, the gatekeepers of trying to make sure that, you know, we can't stop companies from going in there, but we can make sure that good companies and good jobs are going there. And I think taking a look at ourselves internally and going, are we doing this right? You know, we rely on a lot of different, you know, whether it be Nate's firm or Burlington County or, you know, whoever, we rely on a lot of people because at the end of the day, essentially this is a volunteer job for us. I mean, we get paid a little bit, but, you know, we all have jobs and we have to rely on professionals to educate us and make sure we're making the right decisions for our residents.
I think that's a good point, because this is new to us too. if you
This
think
is new
about
to
it.
us, and I think that,
This is the first one of these that we did. Well, you've got Meyershank, you've got Thayer,
Yeah.
and then this one.
AEP, you know.
AEP was an enterprise fund, yeah, I don't even, that's almost different,
But
totally different.
specific, when I say no stone unturned, I know I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit, but it's really important. Not just for myself, but for you and for the residents, is I think that it is very important to me that we give everything we have to whatever question it is, whether it's this or something else, to the residents that are asking them. Even if it's not what they wanna hear or what we wanna hear, they have to feel comfortable that we are maybe not giving them the answer they wanna hear, but we're doing everything we can to give it to them. And, that's very important to me. And I think it's very important to council. I don't think there's anyone that sits up here that's up here for anything other than trying to serve. You know, we all have our different priorities and things that are important to us, but, you know, we all have jobs and lives. But we took this, so we gotta, you know, pull up our bootstraps and do the work. And I want the residents to know that we're doing that, even if we can't give them the answer that we want or they want. They gotta know we're working for them, so. Anybody have anything else?
Thanks, Nate.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
You take roll, Jess, please?
Walter,
Yes?
Height, Lee.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
He practices that all the time.